Great. We now have four board members here. Let's call this meeting of the Concord Municipal Light Board to order. And let's start with minutes. And John, what do you have for us?
I distributed minutes for our January 14th meeting over the weekend, and if there are no proposed edits to those minutes, I move that those minutes be approved as distributed.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thanks. Chris,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I approve as well. So let's move on to the director's report.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody. First of all, I wanted to thank all of the staff who assisted during the very long and very cold power outage that we had on Friday of last week. If you weren't aware, we had an underground conductor that failed in the downtown area right around Main Street and Walden Street, and just before 7 a.m. And the entire line crew that was on hand responded, as well as engineering staff and other staff that supported. There was kind of extreme adversity in the situation with not just the cold, but also the complexity of getting access to the manhole system. There was a car covering one manhole. There was pavement over another manhole that had to be kind of removed on the fly. These manhole systems are filled with water and just really bad, challenging conditions for the line crew to deal with this. There's also fiber optic cable through some of these conductors, which complicates both access and then also restoration. There were also multiple like fire incidents that happened at the same time that required first responders to get in the area. Everybody did just a fantastic job trying to identify, isolate, and remediate this problem. Joe was there on site as well as other engineers and staff who were helping coordinate. The broadband team was there to help to assist. Customer service did just a fantastic job as well. We had three people out that day, so we had one customer service specialist on the phones handling all these calls. And also, let's just say that the business community and the folks that were impacted were also very polite, gracious, and patient with us as we worked to restore this. It took nearly the entire day to get the power back on safely, and then we also had to follow up with that broadband fiber splicing that was repaired, I believe, by about 11 a.m. the next day. So just a huge response from CMLP staff. I'm really grateful that everybody chipped in and did this safely and had no bad issues as a result. We think that this is just old age of the infrastructure. Insulators degrade over time and likely just failed and shorted out and burned up in the conduit. So um, just want to thank everybody for that response. Next, I wanted to mention some positive progress on our 24 and 25 audits. So we've been given our draft financial statements from our auditors for 24, and we'll be returning comments to them in the next couple of days on those draft statements. They'll incorporate those changes. A lot of it's just narrative, where there's some metrics that we might have in there, for example, in broadband, how many customers we added in a given year that comprises their letter. And so they want to make sure that all of that is accurate. So we give them some of those kind of written text information so they can incorporate that. And then they are going to be presenting at the Financial Audit Advisory Committee on February 26th at 1 p.m. And as I mentioned before, the only real issue that we anticipate is this complexity of cash reconciliation with the town as they went through a challenging financial migration. We do feel like we're in a good place there. The letter that we've seen does not really mention or address any of these issues, and we don't know how if it will just be discussed as like something that to keep an eye on, or if it will be incorporated in there, but it's not in the draft that we saw. We did hire a firm to help with that forensic reconciliation, just to make sure that we have the correct to cash, because each of us have a different amount. Basically, it's not a huge variance, but it's much smaller than it had been in the past. But still, we want to make sure that every dollar is accounted for. So teams are working on that to make sure that we understand what the true number is. And then regarding our 2025 audit, again, we hired a new firm, Goulet, Salvideo and Associates, to begin that. They came out and did the inventory process in January, and they've asked us for a lot of information just to get ready. They'll come out once we've closed December and start the audit in earnest. And we're optimistic that things are going to go really smoothly. They're known for meeting timelines, and we're excited to be back on track where we used to be, back before kind of the changes and mergers that happened with our auditing firm, our previous auditing firm. I wanted to mention that the midwinter home tours were just a huge success. Jan and her team and Laura put a lot of thought and effort into this year's tour, and it sounds like it just turned out really well. There were 75 people that got an opportunity to tour one or more homes. They got to see things like solar panels, EV charging, induction stoves, heat pumps in action on a really cold day. And they got very thoughtful and honest feedback from customers who have already made all these changes to their homes. And I think that some of the feedback that you probably saw in the packet, some of the quotes were, I really appreciated the honesty with this, because there are challenges with anything, shifting to any new technology. And the people who are there have found ways to make these things work for them. And I think that the customers, appreciated that it was not just kind of a superficial, like, yay, just do it. It was really getting into the weeds of like, here's how we've adapted. This is what works really well. This is a kind of a learning curve item that we had. And so, we do a lot of surveys after the fact, and they all came back really positive. There was no negative feedback that we got as a result of these. And hopefully it turns into people who are interested in exploring our rebates and other programs. I wanted to provide an update on the middle school solar project. I'm cognizant of the discussion that happened at the school committee a couple weeks ago. I think there was a fair amount of discussion about the roof and the kind of challenges inherent in creating a solar application on the roof that did not penetrate, because the easiest thing to do is install a rack that screws through into some sort of structure in the school. Early on, we knew that we did not want to do that, so that the membrane would be intact and there would be no voided warranty on that roof. And so we've been operating under that assumption this entire time. It does limit our options for what we can do, but there are plenty of ballasted systems, and the structure of that roof can hold a ballasted system. And there's also alternatives like chemical welding or other ways to affix those racks to the roof. It's not a barrier as much as it is just it might limit the number of contractors who are experienced in these alternatives. But it certainly does not mean that the project is not going to happen, or it's going to raise the cost astronomically. We knew that this was kind of a goal of the design from the beginning, so nothing there has changed. I think that some of that conversation came out of the question is, why didn't we get 5 or 10 or 20 interested parties who were bidding? And this is just one of those factors that we believe might have contributed to that, but again, not a huge barrier. I think that right now where we are is we've met with the school administration folks a couple of times to talk about this. We have an opportunity from Mass CEC for a Green Schoolworks grant. They give grants for up to $3 million for projects just like this. We met with the team at Mass CEC. They were excited about this project and thought it met the criteria of the grant. We have talked to the schools, and they have decided that they are supportive of applying for this grant. It is the school who applies, not the utility. And we are eligible, to do this, even though we're not in a Mass Save territory. So we are preparing that application to, with the schools, and they will be submitting that this week. And our hope is that, that would significantly defray the costs of this project. Regardless of whether we get the grant or not, we're going to be meeting with the schools either next week or the week after, just to talk about contingency plans, because what we don't want to do is, be hopeful about this grant opportunity, and then it may be a month or 2 months before they come back with something. And then if it doesn't turn out to be favorable, we've kind of lost that time. So we do want to re-engage, and Bob and the schools are excited to come up with alternative plans as well, and go back to the drawing board with what we had before and see what we can do to make that project a reality. So I see a lot of progress and a lot of good things to be hopeful for on the solar project. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that Johnny McGarry, CMLP's longest tenured employee at 46 and a half years, has given his notice to retire as of April 1st. Johnny is the longest continuously serving Town of Concord employee that's a full-time employee. And, I ask you to think about what you were doing in August of 1979. That's when Johnny started here at the light plant. He has a tremendous amount of experience. He's one of the most positive people I know, and he's done so much for CMLP in the time that he's been here. And I really hats off to Johnny and for everything that he's done to support the metering and customer service team over his tenure. And also, I'll mention that both Ann Breitenweischer and I believe is Donna on the call. I don't see Donna on the call, but anyway, Donna and Annie are leaving as of March 2nd, and I wish them the best as well. And I know that they'll continue to orbit the CMLP world in some capacity, and we're just really grateful for the years of service and dedication from those employees.
No, that's it. Great. Chris.
I just had a quick comment. I'm really happy to see the progress on the school. I did read the article in the Bridge. They were talked about penetrating the roof, and I thought, well, that's not right. My experience has been that these flat roof installations in schools are almost always self-ballasted and don't need to destroy the membrane to connect. And in fact, several districts have set up contracts where they're able to remove the panels and put them back if they need to do work on the roof. So I think that's good progress. Was there any discussion of the batteries as part of that?
So right now, the site license that we have from the schools mentions the canopy solar and the rooftop solar. It does not mention the batteries because we needed to get the bids out. We needed a site license that addressed the solar in the short term. So our plan is that if the project moves forward at a scale that requires the batteries, then we will reengage the school committee and have discussions about that site license for the battery as well. And so right now, we don't have authorization to put a battery on the site, even though the school did kind of design a site in mind on that property with where the battery may go. It does have some challenges in that they've got a natural gas line feeding their backup generator that goes under that area, and it's kind of close to the school gymnasium area. But yeah, so that's where the battery is.
Thanks.
Brian.
I just, based on how long it took to get the site license for solar, I think waiting is an issue. I think getting that agreement between CMLP and the schools finalized so that CMLP can just move forward with the project as a whole. I think that's a better course of action because it's just the old plans got stale, and that was an issue because we waited for site licenses.
Yeah. Can I raise one other thing with the solar project? I want to ask if we get the Mass CEC grant, does that affect who will own the solar system?
That's a great question. We did meet with council to talk about that since this is a school application and a school grant. We feel that CMLP has already expended funds on this project, and the school has no reserves or resources allocated to support it, which means there's no backstop if, for example, the grant doesn't cover the full installation. So in our mind, that the benefit would go to the parties split based on the resources that they bring to the project. So in other words, if it's just hypothetically a $4 million project and the schools get a $2 million grant and CMLP funds the other $2 million, that we would basically split the proceeds or the benefits from the power produced as a result of the array. The schools are not, they want to see this project happen. They're not, looking to take over the project. They're happy to cede control, management, of both the project and the ongoing support of the panels, and are not, in this just to make money. But I also feel like if the schools are able to achieve something that we can't and bring resources to the table, that they should get a proportional split, less any other management, insurance, whatever risk cost that CMLP has.
Makes sense. Any other questions for Jason? Brian, Bianca.
I'm just making Bianca co-host. Sorry, I was talking when she came in. Bianca, you should be able to mute and unmute and turn on your video now.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that I was here, but I was muted and didn't have a video on. But thank you. That's all I wanted to say. And also congratulations and a big thank you to the gentleman you said was retiring and for the two employees that are leaving. Just wanted to say thanks. That's it.
Great. Thanks. Well, let's move on to the broadband report.
Yeah, we'll be brief today. Dale just wanted me to pass along updates on the new XGS PON migration. The team is singularly focused on this project. It is scheduled to occur starting at the end of this month and continuing a little bit into March. We are going to be taking 4 maintenance windows to do this work. And really, what's going to happen is we are moving individual fibers from one piece of equipment to another piece of equipment. And everybody who's a customer is on one of these fibers. And sometimes one fiber can be one customer, it can be 30 or 40 customers. And so during a maintenance window, typically people will go down, only one time, even though we're doing this over 4 separate nights. These nights are long. There's a lot of testing involved once customers are moved to the new equipment. And we want to make sure that everybody is getting all the services that they pay for, the speed that they pay for. And each customer, each fiber that's moved over results in about 15 to 20 minutes of tests that run simultaneously. But so basically, we are going to be notifying everybody of the plan and the maintenance windows. We did send out a news and notices. We've got some things posted on the website. We'll be reaching out directly to customers on the night or before the night they're going to be moved. And they'll know that we may have to reboot something on any of the 4 nights, but typically you'll only be down on the day you're moved, and we'll make that very clear to customers. Like, we're moving you between midnight and 6 a.m. tonight. Expect 15 minutes where service may be interrupted during that window, something like that. And so right now, the team is working very closely with the vendor to figure out if everything is in order and testing all of the different pieces of hardware we have. We have something like 13 different types of ONTs and devices in the field that need to be tested and validated before the migration starts. And similar to a shuttle launch, the team's got a checklist of things that needs to be ready. The vendor feels like we're in a good place to continue on with the schedule, but if anything doesn't test out properly or there are concerns, then we may need to push that. But right now, the vendor feels like we're on track. And once this happens, we'll be able to communicate out to folks about basically the free increase in speed that the residential customers will be getting. We'll be increasing all the tiers without changing any pricing for the residential folks in the short term. And we'll be coming back to the board in the future with conversations about kind of that other pricing structures that we had demoed or discussed in December, and just kind of getting more feedback before we change anything that actually impacts pricing. And yeah, so I hope that in the March meeting, we have a good update that the migration is completed, or at least we have a better sense of where it is if all 4 nights have not completed by that time. And so I'll leave it there. I know we have a lot to talk about today.
Great. Well, good luck with those changes and with the migration. Any questions for Jason? Seeing none, let's move on and let me frame the rest of the meeting. Most of the rest of the meeting, in one way or the other, has to do with time of day and how we're going to make the transition to it. And I want us all to start with the proper frame of mind. And the proper frame of mind is there's not that much time until we actually do transition to time of day on April 1. And our goal should be to try to make it as simple and straightforward as possible so we don't run into unnecessary complications. And we should think about that as we're going through the rate hearing and as we're going through other implementation issues. And with that, let me turn it over to Jason to give an update on where we are with implementation.
Great. Thank you, Warren. Everybody see this presentation?
Yeah, we got it.
Great. So I'm just going to walk through some of these components here, and I'm going to skip right into the first one on rates and decision, look at kind of where we are, where we see risks, what we're working on, and kind of the amazing work the staff are doing. This slide here shows in each of these arrows is a meeting at which time of day or time of use rates were discussed or voted. And I put this up here to show the journey that this has been for both staff and light board members who've been participating in these discussions. This is not the beginning of the time of day discussion. This is just going back to January of 2023. And it really highlights the iterative process we've gone through as we've talked about this and understood the implications of this. I think that we all know, you all remember the rate hearings we've had and the votes that we've had, and how we've learned about how the interdependency that some rates have on other rates and how things are built in the system. And so there's been a lot of complexity here. I think we had a lot of complex rates to begin with, and we're definitely taking this to a new level. Our provider, NISC, tells us nearly every time we talk to them that this is really complex. And the good news is that with time of day, we are moving to a simpler system. But as I mentioned, there is that complexity to unwind, and there are decisions to be made about what happens as a result of these things unwinding. I think ETS was a good example where we had several different meetings to talk about that, get feedback from the public, and make decisions about a complicated program on how we're going to fold that in eventually to time of day when these systems kind of age out. Let me go to the next slide. So once we have that feedback from the board and we kind of know what the goal is, then we actually have to make it happen. And here are just some of the screens that go into the rate design of our application that we use for our enterprise resources. So these are the rates being built here on that screen, and a human has to take the board's wishes and desires and put it into this system that has its own limitations. Rates have to be built for every single month, not just like one time and it kind of goes. And as we build rates, we find that there may be limitations that don't allow us to do what the board wanted, which requires us to go back and get clarification and make adjustments. And so, kudos to Donna and especially Carol for all of their help on this. If you'll remember, Carol retired last year and has been helping out to kind of get us over the finish line here, and just been doing tremendous work building a lot of these time of day rates and making sure that they work correctly. So thank you, especially Carol, and also to Donna for that. So high level for rates, what's going well, and where do we see risk or some of the problems? So the good news is that these rates, both the commercial rates, the general service rates that were slightly modified, and the time of day rates are built in the system. And we've designed rates and charges that address kind of what the board wants. So that part's good. But remember, once we have the rates built, then we need to make sure they appear on a bill in a correct way. And there's nearly 7,000 bills. And so I think that some of the changes have definitely complicated things. And as we make changes and the board makes a decision, then we realize we have another unanswered question that may have implications. And that's been a challenge as we enter this very late phase that we have complex rates and we're trying to make them adhere to what the board's wishes are and the limitations of the system, of course. Like it'd be wonderful if a rate could be built and just would stay in motion until we want it to change. But if we, by delaying, say, from January to April, those were additional rates that we had to build in. And then as we make other decisions about, oh, this rate should become effective on this date, not this date, we just have to kind of go back and rebuild everything from scratch. And then, also we're trying to, and you'll see, as Warren mentioned in this rate hearing, trying to simplify some of the things that we've heard from our provider are very complicated and that may push us into that schedule risk area, just to say, okay, we don't have the resources to deal with that. It may be possible in the software, or there may be a different solution that's a little bit more elegant, but that's going to take too much time away from the team that needs to get this done. So let's get through this, and then we'll come back to that and maybe look at it in a different way. So we're definitely trying to do that. Warren, I think it might make sense because there's a lot here if we've kind of paused after each section just to see if there's any comments, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So any comments on like the rates, either the design or the actual implementation? All right. I'll move on to bill print. Here you see some circles here that look like snippets of different bills, and they're not just the same bill. They're actually 6 different bills that are on here. We had to create 6 new bill prints for this time of day project because any substantial difference in the presentation of a rate or the number of meters that a customer has, or whenever there's a meter swap out, which requires you to put more data on a bill, requires kind of a different template. our staff don't build the templates, the vendor does. And so there needs to be a point in time when we say, okay, we're done with all the decision making, we're done with all the rate programming, and now you can take this and build something from it. We learned last year, like early last year, that our complete bill refresh was scheduled for December of 2026. So that meant we had to make modifications to our bills to make time of day happen that would work within the vendor's allowable margin for like kind of a minor change. If it was a major change, they were going to say you have to wait until basically January of 2027 to have that happen. So again, when I talked about the system limitations before, this is another area where we're trying to make this happen, but we're also a little bit hamstrung by the threshold that the vendor has for the changes that we need to make. And then also just I can't tell you how many times we made new mock-ups of sample bills to say, well, actually now we realize this is going to happen. And once you do make a mock-up, you have to think about different scenarios. We have customers who are on, payment plans. We have customers that, like as I mentioned, they're moving out, moving in. A meter was swapped out during that time. That requires different length bills and more materials appearing on the bill. And so for every single one of these buckets here on this screen, we've got a time of day, reduced rate, time of day, a time of day second meter, solar net billing, ETS, and a meter swap out under time of day. Those were kind of the 6 bill prints that we had identified. And so what's going well here? The good news is that we have a general service time of day rate that somewhat matches our residential time of day rate. And that is there and it works. And so the good news is that no matter what happens with the billing provider in getting all these different bill prints finalized, we have something there that works. It's not as pretty as we want. It's not exactly what we want. But the good news is that we've got a baseline there. And that means they know how to take the logic of our time of day rates that we've designed and make it flow into a bill, which means that it simplifies and increases the likelihood of success for the bill print for time of day. And all of the changes that we've requested are with NISC. They're telling us they'll definitely be done before the May bills go out. And as I mentioned, we have a full refresh scheduled for December of this year. That's when it kicks off. And so at that time, we'll go back to all the things that the board had said, here's what we'd love to have on these time of day bills. We'll go to our library of comments received from customers. I'm confused about this. I don't like that, whatever. And we'll have a conversation with the board again about, okay, here's what we were able to accomplish in the allowable time frame with what our vendor could do. Here's what we had kind of envisioned in the first place, and what can we do to make some final changes to and incorporate feedback we've received so far to do that. And that's probably a multi-month process of getting feedback and going back to the vendor and figuring it out. But this full refresh allows us to think about the holistic bill, about how things are presented and how different rates interplay. You'll remember we don't just have water, sewer, broadband, and electricity now. We now have stormwater, solid waste recycling. And so there are new providers which add to the bill length. There's still a number of customers getting paper bills. And I can tell you from a recent print we had to do, I mean, an individual bill is now well over an ounce, which adds more costs. So these refreshes might allow some consolidation or reorganization of the entire bill presentation. And it's a good opportunity to make some enhancements. In terms of the risks and complications, again, we do have one of the most complicated bill prints of any of their clients. Those rate changes do impact the bill print. So even today's vote is contingent, like our submission to the vendor is contingent upon certain rates being approved. And if they're not, then we have to go back and we incur schedule risk. And then once they're done with all of these bill prints, in an ideal world, they'd be done today. We'd be testing over a couple of months and cycles. Depending on when they actually complete these changes, we may not have as much time as we would like to test them, but we will have time to test them, and we will make sure that we're not going to send out erroneous bills. I'll pause here on the bill print and see if there's any questions.
Any questions or comment?
Sorry, John.
John.
Yeah, Jason, just trying to understand the second comment in terms of all bill print changes are with NASC and they should be done before the May bills go out. I mean, we're moving over in April. So what does that mean for April bills?
Right. So as we've mentioned for several months now, the time of day rates were voted effective April 1st. The time of day rate bill change will not happen on the April bill because you'll be billed in April for your March usage, which will not be time of day. So we've always been telling customers effective April 1st, you'll see the changes on your May bill. So we have that extra month to figure out the billing piece from when time of day becomes active.
Got it. Thank you.
And I have a question on the full bill design at the end of the year. When does that need to be finalized to make that happen?
So basically, what's going to happen is that the team at NISC will engage with us in December, and we'll have an initial kickoff meeting to talk about the process and learn how they want to have this process go or how it typically goes. And then I would imagine once we get that information, we'd kind of maybe schedule an agenda item with the board to talk about that and get some initial feedback. And as I mentioned, we'll go back and present, here was our target. Here's where we ended up with. Here's the feedback the board had. Here's the feedback the public have had. And let's have a conversation about what our priorities should be during that refresh. And we'll kind of say, administratively, we'd like to see these things happen because it may consolidate the number of pages or reduce the number of pages in a bill, or it may make certain functions simpler for staff, right? And then the board may say, well, we'd like to see this change, or this could be bigger, or this could be over here, or we'd like to see a new element added to the bill. From the questions that we've got, it seems like this would, reduce confusion, say, and then we would work on designing that with the vendor, come back, and the board would say, yeah, that looks great, and then we give it.
Okay, so the
There's no
redesign work will take place in December.
right, exactly.
When would it become effective?
That really depends on the process that we go through and how quickly we turn around, a final requirement for them. I think that in my mind, it's going to take a few months for us to really get through that. And that's really because, like I said, we want to have a conversation with the board, and we can probably have some of those conversations even potentially before December, right? Just to align with what our goals are. And then once we engage with them, we'll first understand what they think of as a typical timeline. Is it 60 days, 90 days, longer, for that cycle of, giving feedback, them producing mock-ups and examples, us looking at it, testing it, making sure that it has the desired result, and then signing off. I think I don't know from when we sign off on the bill print, like how long it takes them to do. It probably depends on how complex
Okay.
the changes are, but we'll know a lot more once we have the kickoff, and we can certainly find out some of those basic answers to your questions before then.
Thanks. So this is new news for us because when we last year talked about the design of the bill and came up with um, what we thought a good bill would look like, the assumption was we'd actually be able to have it ready to go when we launch time of day. But it sounds like that was never actually going to be possible.
Well, I won't say that that's true. I think that a lot of the elements that everybody agreed upon are in this new bill.
Okay.
And again, we got as many things as we possibly could without tripping that threshold. So it wasn't like we got the same exact bill. There were design modifications, colors, graphs, historical data, groupings. A lot of the elements are there. But, we looked at a lot of different providers that had completely different styled bills. I think that's where, and for example, like let's say we wanted to provide people information like, if you had shifted 10% of your load away from the peak, you could have saved $3 on this bill. There are things that were over the line for them in terms of complexity that we couldn't do in this redesign. But it is very much a redesign. It will look very different from the current bills, and we tried to get as much as we could of the goals in this round. But they had a line, and we had to respect that, or else we would not be going live for another year and a half.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So, Brian.
I'm just a comment. I'm generally concerned with our lack of control over the templates. It sounds like, the future boards are going to want small changes in structure or how something presents in the bill. And the lead time on this just seems incredibly long and totally out of our control, which is unfortunate. I wish we had more template control, but it's just a comment.
Yeah, I mean, I foresee the entire system is undergoing kind of radical changes as they move to more of a web-based era. The screenshots you saw and some of those images early on in this presentation, you can probably see how dated the core backend of the software database is. But I foresee that they're moving into something that where utilities would have a little bit more control over modifying some elements. There are some elements of a bill print where a static image or other materials can go. And so we can basically upload a file into an area and they can say, this can appear here. And we can do that ourselves. And they're striving toward that because they realize what a bottleneck this is for utilities. I mean, I will say historically, utilities didn't change much on their bills very often. And I think their cycle was like, every 3 to 5 years, people would kind of have a refresh and see what's changed. It's unusual to have so many new utilities, to have so many fundamentally different rate structures that we've had in the last, I'd say, 5 years. I think that it will probably level out a little bit, but I agree. It isn't an ideal situation. I think we would rather have more control. I think the concern for them is they have to support the process from beginning to end. And the more control they give to customers, the more chance that the customers can break the functionality in the software and then turn back to the provider to say, fix this. And they don't have the resources to keep supporting that. So they need a little bit of control to make sure it doesn't go haywire, but that's where the balance is.
Great. Thanks. Let's go on to the next.
All right. So customer outreach. I'd like to give a shout out to Laura and Jennifer for their support here. Laura's been attending some meetings in the public and is also a great escalation point for customers who have questions or really detailed questions or want to walk through what this world looks like. Jennifer has also been great taking questions and concerns from the customer service team and turning those into a library of materials that can be used to train others or provide more uniform and standard responses. And then the customer service team has been fantastic, kind of taking some of those questions, addressing them without a lot of information, and then trying to work with others to develop more robust answers to some of those questions. So in terms of what's happening, bill inserts have gone out or going out momentarily for this February bill as well. We've got another one going out in January or in March rather. The emails from Questline, the marketing firm that we have hired, have gone out. We had a little glitch with a link to a video that didn't work in the second email, but other than that, we've seen a lot of engagement. A much higher open rate than they typically expect when people send out marketing emails like this. It obviously drops off after the first email because people have said, oh, okay, I've already kind of taken a look at this. We are working on individualized outreach to customer groups. Examples are like ETS customers, solar customers, heat pump customers, anybody on the existing time of use rate, and then rate assistance customers to sort of preemptively let them know about the changes, where they can go if they have questions, resources that are on the website. And we're hoping that this will cut down on the number of calls to customer service and the confusion that people might have if they're on one of these kind of unique situations, and kind of really tailor a response so that they understand, well, what's happening to me specifically. Like, I got it, time of day is coming, but like, I'm on this special rate, and like, is it going away, and what's changing about it? And the broad communications aren't addressing all of those use cases because it would be overwhelming for most people who don't apply to any of those cases. And so I also wanted to mention, in line with one of those things that we needed to do to focus on time of day. For our rate assistance customers, we are automatically extending participation in that program this year without requiring them to go through the extensive renewal process, as long as they maintain eligibility with SMOC or other agencies. We're just going to continue that for this year, and also likely modify our delinquency process to probably reduce the formal collections that we do. The DPU has already extended the moratorium for shutoffs through April, and it's a short window of time when we do these shutoffs, and it takes a huge amount of time from the customer service team, and that team needs to be singularly focused on time of day and supporting the customers who have questions or concerns about time of day. And we will still do everything we can to run analysis on, underpayment or past due folks and do our best to do collections. We just will be modifying the process to make it less resource intensive for the customer service team. In terms of what's going well and where we have concerns on customer outreach, these communications are going out roughly on schedule. The in-person events are being received incredibly well. There's lots of good questions and engagement. I've been to a couple of these events. Laura's gone to others. She's going to the Climate Action Committee today. And we've got more events planned. And again, our hope is that by reaching some of these folks directly and really being able to answer in real time some of their concerns, those people will be the ones that their neighbors turn to. Hey, I know you attended that thing. Like, tell me what's going to happen here. And that's fewer questions, fewer concerns that come into CMLP as we make this big change. Issues that we're having, some people understandably have a lot of questions. They maybe have a really unique use case. They've got 4 meters, they've got ETS, they've got heat pump, they've got a TOUR meter, they've got sub meters, they've just got a complicated situation and they really need some additional assistance walking through that. So it really is taking a lot of staff time to help understand those changes in impact for folks. This next one, I cannot understate the impact of the new utilities and their implementation and what it has done to the customer service team and the amount of time it has taken. The stormwater utility was supposed to go live last fall and it has been delayed and is only going live early in Q1 of this year. And it's an entirely new provider with solid waste recycling. People had it before, people have it now. It's just the bill is in a different place. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have trash that needs to be picked up. Stormwater does not make sense to a lot of people. They've never heard of it before. They get a new charge on their bill, and it requires a lot of staff time to explain what it is, why it's being collected, how you can file an appeal if you feel like the calculation is incorrect. We had a lot of data that wasn't correct that went in the first time. We had a lot of customers who've never gotten a bill for a long time because they don't have services, get bills. A lot of confusion, a lot of very small payments, too small to make payments online. Just so many issues that have come up with this. And then again, we were supposed to be through all of that, so that we could focus 2026 on time of day, but it has persisted and continues to persist with issues with that implementation. And then, I think that we thought we knew what we needed to prepare for customer materials and engagement and letters and documents, but there are still new things that come up nearly every week where people say, I have this problem too, and do you have a letter for me? Or, what script can we give to customer service to create that? And so, again, teams have to divide their time right now and get these projects over the finish line, and yet we also really need to take time to make sure that customers explain this, and that just take a lot of time. But again, I think that we're doing a good job with that and we're generating a lot of these materials, which saves more time in the long run. But the folks who are generating them are also the ones acting as project managers to work with the vendor and, the other stakeholders to do the testing. So just limited resources there. I'll pause here and see if there's any questions on customer outreach.
Would it be helpful, excuse me, would it be helpful on the stormwater utility front to put something in the newspaper, re-explaining what it is, people are seeing it on their bill, how the process works, and do more of a mass education through the paper?
Yeah, I mean, it's not our place to do that as we're not the utility, but absolutely, I think that we've worked with the Public Works crew and team to try to educate customers a lot. I think part of the problem is, the same problem that any new service has, which is that you don't realize where the problems are until they happen. You don't realize what the decision is until you make it. And, again, I think they're bumping up against the same limitations, the same concerns that we're finding or that we found early on in the process. And so, if everything was fully baked and everything was correct and all the data was there and everything was figured out, then the communication would be helpful. I think that it's only until very recently that all of that has been kind of ironed out. And so I think it may help, sometime now before time of day hits, just to kind of remind people what it is. But we may also see call volumes drop by that time, So
So
We'll,
might actually do the opposite effect and get people more
right,
interested in the topic and calling.
right, right. All right, I'll keep moving on to tools and resources. So, this is another area where we've had a lot of progress, and I think things are being received really well. We know that certain things resonate with other folks, or with some folks, and other things with others, and we're trying to make sure that we have something for everybody, without, forcing everything on people who are just not interested. The calculators are getting a lot of use. We have simple calculators, we have complicated calculators, we have calculators where you can just put in kind of a kilowatt hours a month and kind of see what your rate would be. You can put in, select what appliances you have or use and when you use them. And so those we're finding are useful for folks to answer their own questions. We've got flyers and postcards. We'll be doing a postcard mailing to every resident in Concord who will be impacted by time of day. We've got materials printed that are up at the front desk. We've got postcards that we're making just for staff to have on them, so that if there's a line crew member or broadband member who's out in their van and somebody says, engage them in conversation, says, yeah, I got this letter the other day, and where do I find more information about that? And we wanted to make sure they had materials as well. The FAQs continue to grow and be refined as we get, different types of questions, or we find that our answers, left people with more questions afterward. And then also forms. So we did have an opt-out form. We tried to make it really simple for people. It's a few clicks online now where you can do it through Adobe Sign. I thank Jennifer for getting that done. And we'll also have, people can obviously mail it in or bring it in as well, but that will simplify the process. We're trying to be very open and transparent with what we think people's rates will be, but we're also trying to give them context and also discuss even phase two and what that means for them, because we don't want people to make a rash decision and say, oh, my electricity will go up $2.09 over the year. Like, I'd rather opt out. We want to make sure that they understand that they can affect their usage to a degree, and perhaps some of these people who would pay just a tiny bit more should consider, trying time of day and seeing what they can do. And then, as I said, some of those custom resources for these unique customers. And a lot of this is we design a certain amount, and then we have customers who ask for a lot more. And people like Laura and others handle these escalations, and they do a lot of detailed analysis. And then that is really useful for the team to digest and understand how we can take that and communicate it out to other people to maybe prevent, the need from doing that, so that people can answer their own questions. In terms of what's working well and where we have some challenges. Oh, I don't think that I might have the wrong slide here. I think that's the wrong slide. I'll just mention that for the calculators, I think that we have some folks who are coming to us and saying, I'd rather just know my specific usage. Like, it's great to type in a number, but I know that in the summer I use a lot, in the winter I use it very little because I don't have heat pumps or electric heating. And putting in a number, it doesn't really tell me the story. So a calculator is useful to see what maybe load, if you shift it, what your bill impact would be. But we're finding that kind of the simple calculators people are not stopping there. They still want to know more. And as I mentioned, the FAQs, we continue to refine and make tweaks to those. I think that the other thing is just what I mentioned before, is that there's only so many staff, and the staff are either moving the project along, directly addressing customer questions, issues, problems, or they're creating materials that can be used as resources for others. And so just the challenge is really just splitting ourselves among all of those functions in a way that makes sure that the project meets the deadline and that people are not having questions that are going unanswered. And so we're trying to deepen the bench of folks who can interact with these tools. As I think I mentioned in a previous meeting, Laura has met with every single division here at CMLP to talk about this and what it means, so that everybody can at least answer some basic questions about time of day and what that looks like. So I'll pause here and see if there's any questions on tools.
Any questions or comments on this? I have a couple.
Sure.
One is, this goes back to John's comment earlier. I think you should be prepared for lots of people contacting you in April when they get their April bill and they say it doesn't reflect time of use rates.
Yeah.
And my second comment, do you have an opt-in form? So if somebody opts out and 3 months later they want to opt in, it's easy for them to make that change back.
Yes, we're trying to prevent people from opting in and opting out over and over. So one of the things that we're trying to communicate is that you can only opt out once every 12 months. But I think that we don't want to limit people from opting in. But I will say that opting in and opting out creates a lot of complexity and confusion because you're going to get a bill that's going to, first of all, you can only opt out at the end of a period. So in other words, if you opt out April 15th, for example, or let's say May 15th, that opt out will take effect the beginning the first of the next month, so that
Yes.
there's not going to be a mixed, confused bill, right? But in the back end, there's a lot of work that needs to happen to make sure that everything is done correctly, and then test and check it. And after we do a bill run, we have to go through the opt outs and opt ins, anybody who's changed, and make sure that it is correct. So we certainly want to discourage people from trying to say like, oh, I might save $2 this month, so I'll opt out, and then next month, I'm going to be away, so I'll opt in, and this month, like
Yeah.
we definitely are trying to discourage that. But yes, our goal is to make it very easy for people to opt in and out. But yes, in should be just as easy as opting out. We want to make sure it's very clear. And perhaps even a good suggestion resulting from that would be after somebody opts out, we could send them a letter letting them know how they can opt back in if they change their mind after they get their next bill or something.
Good. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the anybody who wants to opt out, the form or some other way should indicate that, there's here's the procedure if they want to opt back in, and they can't do it, month by month.
Right.
If they make that decision, it's going to be a decision for a year or whatever.
Yeah.
I just quick comment. I agree with Warren. It should be a full year you get locked into a rate. If you opt out, you're opt out for a year. Same for opting back in, because otherwise you will have that back and forth.
Yeah, I think that in our planned vote for next month, when we actually eliminate the R1 rate and everything, one of our goals was to make that explicit on the tariff sheet that, when you make a change, it needs to persist for 12 months. So that is conceived.
Good. Chris.
Yeah, my question is not directly related to the tools and resources, so I can hold it till later. But
You can ask it now if you.
okay, well, I just wondered what it was looking like. How many people were opting out?
That's actually a good question. So we obviously, anybody who has an opt-out meter is automatically opted out, and we've got somewhere between 30 and 40 of those meters. A couple of them, like a customer might have 2 meters. So I feel like the number was about 36 or 37 customers who had opted out for the meters. On top of that, I don't know if Jennifer or anybody on the call knows the actual. We've got one person so far, is what I'm seeing, who's actually, as a result of the communications, the emails, the marketing materials, who's opted out. So one person so far. Our plan is to log when they're received so we can kind of see, like, did something in particular happen? Do a lot of people opt out after the summer months or after the spring months, so that we can keep track of that. But yeah, so I'm being told, in addition to the meters, one person has opted out of the rate itself, which is
Oh, that's
pretty
not bad.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, I just have one thought, and it could be somewhat resource intensive, but the objective here is to really provide customers with the tools they need to really capitalize on time of day.
Mm-hmm.
And reflecting on kind of Bianca's experience, where she said that her thermostat assumed that she was, I think, an Eversource customer. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could, or you could, for very popular thermostats, provide some guidance in terms of how customers can ensure that their thermostats, smart thermostats, understand what the time of day rates are so that they can be making, appropriate decisions in terms of, when to run heat pumps and things like that. Just a thought there. And this isn't necessarily something that needs to be done for April 1st or
Right.
even May 1st, but I'm just thinking longer term.
Yeah.
This might be a way to really help customers make sure that they're really able to kind of respond to the price signals that we're giving.
Yeah. Laura, did you want to comment on the connected homes communications
Yeah,
that,
so for both those instances that you mentioned, John, we are planning targeted communications with respect to the Wi-Fi thermostats that are enrolled in connected homes. Um, Unfortunately, the OEMs are not going to allow us to throttle those thermostats down on a daily basis to optimize TOD. They will only allow the throttling down for limited instances. So basically peak shaving they'll allow, but daily time of day they won't. So one of the targeted communications we're sending out is to all of our connected homes Wi-Fi thermostat customers. It should go out mid next week, and it's going to tell them if you want to optimize time of day, you're going to need to go to your the instruction manual for your manufacturer and program it in. And it's actually going to give them instructions by each of the popular manufacturers on how to do that. So that's one example, yeah, of how that's going to work. And then for heat pumps, we are planning to send out a targeted communication to those customers. We would like to recommend the set it and forget it methodology. Heat pumps are not one of the usages that we're recommending folks try to target for time of day management. So both of those cases, we're hoping to reach to that particular community first and kind of lay out what our thought process is and what they need to do, what they don't need to do, so that we can get that knowledge out to the people who need it.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Great. Well, let's move on, Jason, because
okay, yeah.
we have a big agenda.
So I just wanted to mention some of the analysis and internal training tools that we've done. We've got a script that takes literally every residential customer's usage for the entirety of 2025 and does some really detailed analysis on this, which will give them what they paid energy only. We're not talking about credits and customer charges, but just for your energy, including capacity, transmission, distribution, for under R1, under time of day, and under opt out. And this is a behind the scenes tool. This is a tool for customer service to help do analysis with customers when they call, when they email in, and they want some more detailed information. It will also give them potential information on how much they could save if they shifted a certain amount of their usage off of the peak. It'll also tell them what percentage of their power is used during the peak and the super off peak. It also will give us some data quality attributes. So for example, if a meter didn't have full 12 months of data, that's going to matter if we tell people their annual savings. So it kind of gives the customer service team an idea of the reliability of that data. And then also it's dynamically generating written communication templates with actual customer data automatically. So the customer service team need only put in a customer account number, and then they're given basically text that they can copy and paste right into an email. And our hope is that this will save a lot of time when people start really, asking, what is my usage? What is my case going to do? Is this going to go up or down for me? What can I do to save? So we've got all those templates kind of already built in there, and continue to refine that and add more. And Jennifer and Jesse and Laura have been tremendously helpful in testing, validating this data, and making and adapting those templates. As I mentioned, that's already done. The tool is available, and we still get feedback. And really, I think one of our concerns is the time we take away to train staff on how to use something is just time that we lose. And so we're trying very hard to balance the desire and for training and making sure that everybody is streamlined. And my lights went out. With the information that they need to support customers, but just a challenge finding that time. So I'll pause there. Brian, you've got some.
I just wanted to, you request that that you run that for the board members and send them those templated emails so that we understand kind of what they look like, how we fit in and so forth. That'd be great.
I did send the board members an early version of this tool with just kind of a line of your information, but it's changed dramatically since then. So I'd be happy to do that again, as well as share with you kind of the template where we are today of what we're sending to folks.
Great,
Good.
thank you.
All right, so the next two slides talk about go live, contingency planning, as well as what's happening after go live. So our goal is to make a decision around the 1st of March on whether we can go live successfully based on this criteria. First of all, we obviously want to know, does the system work fundamentally? Like, does the information generated from a customer's meter flow into the meter data management system, flow into our billing system, and appropriately bill the customer for the amount that they used within different periods? That's obviously fundamental. If that doesn't work, we can't go live. We have no reason to believe it's not going to work, but I just want to, set the expectations here. That has to work for us to be able to go live. And then if it does work, which we, are assuming it's going to, are the number of expected errors or problems or deviations within the tolerance allowable to maintain public trust in the program? So in other words, like it does work, but we have so many other problems and errors and confusion and bill print issues that going live would be disastrous for the public trusting that they're getting an accurate bill, and or that they're concerned with our ability to deliver on the project as we intended it. So those are the questions that we need to answer, and really it's dependent a lot on the testing of the rates that we've designed and the bill print that NISC is doing. Those are really the two areas where we will need to assess kind of at the end of the month and say, again, Donna will still be here at that time, Annie will still be here, and we'll say, okay, here's everything we know today, and we'll be very open and honest with the board and the public. And if we feel like we can do this, we know there will be issues. There will be a bill that's doesn't print correctly, or there'll be some weird glitch here, glitch there. But if they're reasonable, manageable, if things are just difficult, we can still do that. If things are filled with inaccuracies, if they're going to break the public's trust on bills, if it just can't work, if the system doesn't work, then obviously we need to have a plan. So we are preparing, contingency plans and timelines for what that would look like. And again, they're also dependent on the vendor. If the vendor says like, we're in a bad place, however, we only need 2 more weeks to get this done, that's one contingency. Another situation is just the bill print. The people who did the bill print left the organization, and they're telling us it's going to be 3 more months or something, right? That's a different contingency. So we are working on that and planning that. We know we have the forum for the board on March 4th. We will definitely know at that time whether we're intending to flip the switch on on that date. Obviously, the content of the forum we're going to discuss in a little bit, but we will make sure that before that time that we have a decision that we can absolutely meet our core mission here, or we have to make some modifications in the schedule. I'll pause there. Any questions on John?
I guess I would just say, I think, Jason, your perspective is right on. Is we really have to be careful here in terms of, risking relationship with customers, in terms of, so we want to make sure that everything is, is in really strong position to kind of get information out and get that information out correctly, because I just, we don't want this to go wrong. So I don't think waiting a month at the end of the day, if there are real risks and real concerns, is something that that I think we should be comfortable with delaying such a decision if that was necessary. That's just my perspective.
Good point. Okay, are there any other comments before we move on?
This was just my last slide, Warren. I'll just run through it real quick. Just that we have post go live communications going out via email to customers, 1 per week for the first month after go live, that will be telling them, giving them more tips and tricks on what they can do to save under time of day. And we're also trying to ready ourselves to be able to report on the efficacy of the rates, right? We're expecting that there will be some reduction in peak usage, and the customers may actually change their behavior as a result of these rates. And we want to be able to track that and understand what that looks like, and be able to report to the board after 3, 6, 9, 12 months and say, hey, because of time of day, because of this reduction in the peak, our capacity transmission costs have been reduced by this amount, and this is really the success of the project, right? So we're trying to work on that, and as you mentioned, metrics on how many people are opting out, and what is causing them to opt out, and then are people happy with this? Do they understand it? Things like that. So I can stop there. I know we've got a lot of other things to discuss. Any
Great.
other questions?
John,
Yeah, I think that feedback loop for customers is going to be really important, right? I mean, if people can see this is the savings that we've gotten, that really reinforces behavior. And I think that that information is going to be really helpful to ensure that time of day is successful.
good. Let's move on to the public meeting. Um, this is important for all of us on the board to give close attention to because the goal is to have us all participate actively in the meeting and have speaking roles. And Jason's come up with a good plan for how to structure the meeting that we want to get reactions to.
Okay, I'll share my screen here. This is in your packet, and this was an idea that we came up with for how we might be able to structure this. And it basically breaks the presentation into a couple different buckets, and it would allow a light board member to basically introduce a section and talk a little bit about it. And we could certainly work on refining the sections. We've not assigned anything to anybody, except that we think that the chair will say some opening remarks. Call the meeting to order because we're going to post this as a light board meeting just in the event that there's deliberation or any open meeting law issues. So we'll, call the meeting to order, and then Warren will give some introductory remarks, and then we'll kind of walk through these sections. And the sections are the why are we doing this, the benefits to customers, how we got here, a brief history, a technical deep dive of like, okay, what is happening, what are the changes, what you can do to save, and then next steps and implementation timeline. So right now, as we've got it worked out, basically a board member would introduce a section, and we've got some sample text here. Really, these are suggestions. We're open to any feedback on how we structure this. We've got about, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes to talk about this today, and I think we're eager to get some feedback from board members on if they think that this would allow for some participation from board members in the presentation. And then, of course, like after the presentation ends, we expect a lengthy time for questions and answers, both formal, where people can ask questions on camera, and then the board really wants to make sure we save enough time for cameras are off, we're milling about, and people who are there from the public can walk up and ask a board member, hey, I've got questions, or I've got concerns, or I've always wondered this, or, and have that individualized conversation so that we make sure people who feel comfortable doing it in that setting have an opportunity to do so. And so, I don't know, Warren, do you think maybe we just walk through each of these and explain kind of what the sections are and see what people's reactions are, or do you want to get?
Well, let's make sure no board member doesn't want to do that. Okay, okay, let's go.
Okay, so an example here for the why is, just the basic background about costs varying based on the time of day when the electricity is produced or consumed, and that, the goal here was to have the rates that consumers pay better reflect the actual cost of their electricity usage, and that these rates were not designed to be punitive, or increase light plant revenue. It's simply to reflect how the costs for electricity work, especially with these capacity and transmission peaks. And then that would segue into staff explaining, how transmission and capacity costs are levied and why that plays such a big factor in the cost of electricity when it's used at a given time, and that initial motivation. Any questions, concerns, comments on that? Does anybody feel particularly driven to speak on the why that we do this? Brian?
Oh, I'm driven to speak on it.
Okay.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
before you volunteer for that, I wondered if you're going to be more interested in talking on the history section.
No, the why I think
Okay.
is so. I'm available. This is a topic I'm passionate about, so volunteer me for whatever you want.
No,
Um, but the why, I think you hit the two big points, which is roughly a third of our expenses are based on when we consume electricity. And the idea of time of day is that we are going to expose people, customers to those expenses so that they can make decisions so the whole cohort can save money by avoiding the peaks. The other point which you mentioned, which is great, um, is the the old rate class treated everybody as the average. The time of day rates are going to treat people more as individuals within the rate. So your actions are going to have more direct response to your bill than it would have in the past. So that's the two big things on why we're doing this. One is the growing expense, and about a third of our expenses we can control by shifting. And the other is the individual has more and is more empowered to save on their bill under these rates. And that's the benefit to all of the rate class.
Would anyone have any objection if I mention that peak power also is the dirtiest?
I think that's under the next section, which is the benefits, right? So like we start
Yeah.
with the why, and then one of the benefits I think we have here is less pollution resulting from, so maybe you're volunteering for the benefits, Bianca, and you could speak about some of the benefits.
Sure.
Cost savings it should be the main headline. And I'd like sustainability to be a sub headline, just because this is a cost effort.
Well, I think you're going to really do a great job of covering that
Okay. Yep.
in
Yeah.
section 4.
I will.
I mean, I think there's at least a subset of us who care a lot more about the sustainability and the cost, to be honest. I mean, we're already paying extra for things to be able to reduce our climate impact. And there are people like me who want to hear about that.
Yeah.
So I don't
Okay.
think we should hide that it's a climate friendly policy.
Well, I just don't want it to be branded as a sustainability initiative.
No, I don't want people to walk away thinking this is going to cost me more
Right.
to do the right thing.
Right. That's exactly what I want to avoid.
It's a win-win, and real sustainability is always a win-win.
Exactly. And I
Love it.
think that the way we have it structured here with the why and then the benefits, like clearly it's a big benefit, and that's why it's mentioned here. And we have a couple others, right? Equity with the rates, lower system-wide costs for peak usage that's reduced, more control over for people's bills, less pollution. And then, down the road, the reason why more and more utilities will be going to this is that the cost to build new transmission lines is astronomical. And if we can get more time with the existing infrastructure, it's just going to save a lot more money on those costs. So, all right. So, Bianca, are you open to speaking on the benefits or Chris? Yeah. Okay. I'll put Bianca down for that. So, I got Brian on the why, Bianca on the benefits. And again, this is example language. I think in my mind, once we understand who might speak to each of these groups, then perhaps, you can look at this as an example. You can write your own notes. You can speak off the cuff. You just understand like this is your introduction, and we'll figure out how much time that's going to take. And then staff can show you the supporting material that they might present. So you know that it can be done in coordination. I think also breaking it up in this way allows us to have individualized conversations with board members without an open meeting law violation as we seek to coordinate a presentation that includes both a staff component and a board member component. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit here, make it a little easier to read. Okay, so now we have the history. How did we get here? Why did we conceive of time of day rates 15 years ago, and why are they coming out today, right? So we had to change our billing system. We had to change all of our meters. We had to get a lot of feedback and have a lot of staff initiatives to make this happen. And it's been its goal in the Climate Action Resilience Plan. It's been part of the CMLP strategic plan for a very long time, nearly a decade. And so this just explains how we got to here and what the process has been and where the public opportunity for input has been along the way as well. Because we find that's really important. I've talked to some customers who are confused or angry or upset about this, and hearing that this wasn't something that we cooked up, the staff cooked up a few weeks ago. This is something that's been discussed for a very long time, and that we've really tried to get a lot of public input on this process. Helps them understand that this is something that the community asked for and that we're making happen. Anybody particularly drawn to either the history or the opportunities for savings? We've got Chris and John.
I'm
Yeah,
happy
I'm
to.
not sure we necessarily need to have a board member speak on the brief history topic if no one is jumping up. We would want to get every board member having a speaking role at some point in this.
Right.
John or Chris, do one of you want to speak on what you can do to save?
I'm happy to fill in wherever is needed. If I was going to do the brief history, I would probably need some help because I'm the newest board member here. But I certainly could speak to any of these things and be happy to do that.
Same is true for me.
So, well, John, since you have a little more history than Chris, do you want to introduce the section on the history, John? And then
Certainly,
Chris,
I can do that. Yeah.
what you can do to save?
Okay, great. So we've got Brian on the why, Bianca on the benefits, John on the history, and Chris on the savings. And as I said here during this, I mean, we may not call it a deep dive, this just as an example. This is just when we're going to discuss what's changing, when does it change, what will it look like, how will it work for you, what do you do if you're not happy, where do you get more information, what is this phase one and phase two. We're finding, like, we kind of thought phase two was just kind of something in the future, but a lot of people are very interested in phase two. And also, it really does enter the conversation when people say, why are the super off-peak and the off-peak such a small variance? And also, this seems like if I shift all this load to off-peak, I'm not saving that much. Well, it's like, well, you're not in phase one, but under phase two, it may be really dramatic savings. And so, we want to give enough information, let people know that it's coming without being too obviously certain with the numbers because we don't have those until they're voted. But anyway, so that would be what would happen in the.
I would request that we put up some kind of values, estimates.
Yeah. We do, and we're putting in, these are placeholders, like this is an example. Yeah.
Yeah, of the 2027 rate, just the revenue neutral values that we looked at in the cost of service study, just put them up there so people can see that the first phase is just a 1/3 step to show time of use, and it's not going to have a huge bill impact. But 27, you're going to have the full, change, and that should see that peak rate go up quite a lot, and that super off come down. And then people can say, oh, well, I may save $5 this year or this month under that, but now it's going to be 15 or 20 when it changes.
Yep, that's a good suggestion. All right, so then under this, what you can do to save section, again, we'll talk about connected homes and things you can do to set it and forget it, small changes you can make to, save on your bill, and how we're trying to build momentum as we enter phase two so that folks are really successful under that. And then, we'll talk a little bit about timeline and next steps, what you'll see and when, and then, we'll do a wrap up. Warren can do a wrap up, and then we can take questions. And really, anybody can field questions. So there may be questions about the history, about the why. There may be questions about the, how is this going to impact me? I've got this unique setup, whatever. And then we'll kind of address those. And then after the questions die down, we'll kind of end the formal meeting. We can, adjourn the light board meeting, we can stop recording, and then folks can just kind of separate and mill about and talk to people as individuals. And if people have, follow-up questions, we'll have materials at this event as well that people can take with them in person. This will be a hybrid event, so there'll be a Zoom component as well in case people can't make it to the building. Of course, with it being in March, there could be a weather system. Let's hope that this brutal winter is done with us by March, but we never know. So any other questions? Or so what I would envision now is, now that we know the kind of who will do what, I can send this out to folks as a Word document, and we can workshop as much or as little as you'd like. We can help you write bullet points, or we can write the actual text. You can read it. If you want to do it, on your own, it's completely fine. Everybody may have a different preference, or they may have different requirements or time schedules in terms of what they can dedicate to this. We just want to be available to support however folks want. And so I'll reach out individually. Probably me and Laura or Jennifer, will reach out individually to make sure that people feel comfortable with whatever they're introducing. And if you have any particular questions about it, we can kind of go from there. Does that sound good, Warren?
That sounds good. John, did you have a question or?
No, I just was I was going to express my preference, but if Jason's going to reach out individually, that's great. Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
I have one question. We're talking just about time of day, but what about people that have riders? Like, are we going to have a slide that talks about how solar is impacted? Are we going to talk about, how it impacts ETS or any of those other special categories?
I would anticipate that because this rate impacts all those others, that in that technical deep dive section, we would just have a slide that would say, these were the rates, these are where they're going. And that, when we get to the Q&A section, people can ask more specific questions about those, if it applies to them or if they're curious about something. And then, of course, we can walk them through it individually. But I agree. I think that because time of day is causing other rates to go away or change, we should at least mention which ones are and give a high level.
Could you make some slides? Just they don't have to be part of the presentation, but just have them ready for when those Q&As come up.
Yep.
Like one slide on each of those kind of topics, so that
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah,
So
and
we want to keep this presentation
Light.
on time so that we have a good amount of time for questions. What that means, no board member should talk for more than 2 minutes in the presentation section. And to think about that, it takes 3 minutes to read a single sheet of paper double spaced. So if you're envisioning how much you're going to save, you have like 2/3 of a page double space in your mind. So keep it to that. And there'll be time to make additional comments during the question and answer period, but we want to keep the presentations brisk because one of the real benefits of doing this event is that people can actually ask questions and get responses to them. Okay? Great. Let's move on. We have to enter into a rate hearing. And I am terrible at motions. So, Jason, do you want to? Oh, there's the sample motion. Who wants to make a sample motion? Brian.
I move.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I move
Chris.
that we suspend the meeting in progress and enter into a rate hearing for the purpose of discussing the rates listed in the posted agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
You did that very well, Chris and Brian.
Mm.
Bianca, do you
Yes.
approve? Chris,
Yes.
John, Brian,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Okay, we're in a rate hearing. We have a few very specific things we need to address.
all right, I'll
So,
turn this
Laura.
over to Laura. And Laura, do you want to share, or is this okay for me to
So
share?
you can go ahead and share, that's fine. I would like to preface my very short presentation today with a couple of comments that have already been made by Warren and Jason, and I'm going to dumb it really far down. So first of all, frame of mind. We are nearing the end, and we are going to be proposing rate changes that need to be implemented. Number two, what Jason said, we have system limitations. And so what we're proposing here both meet the spirit of what the board has requested in the past to see in these particular rate sheets we're going to discuss, and also can be done within the confines and limitations of our existing billing system. So it's kind of read my lips. Comments about well, couldn't we do this or that, or could we tweak this or that, will not be welcome. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. The next sheet.
Okay.
So the first one we're going to talk about.
Oh, and if I can jump in with one thing, some of these things, we're not making a decision for all time. There are things that we're doing now that will make it easy to implement time of day rates that we could come back and revisit at some point in the future.
For
You know,
sure.
it can even be for next year potentially.
For sure.
Whole thing.
Okay, the first rate, we're going to talk about two rate assistance rates because we believe that just like any other customer, a customer who qualifies for our rate assistance rate based on economic need should have the choice between whether they want to be on the TOD rate or they want to be on the opt-out rate. So this first tariff sheet covers instances where those customers choose to be on the time of day rate. And you'll notice that this is not a rider, it's a new rate. And what we've done in the new rate is we have zeroed out the meter charge as was requested at the last board meeting. And we have set the time of day rates to be lower than the regular time of day rates. And these rates you see on this sheet result in providing the same dollar credit that was provided to these customers in 2025. We had to make some assumptions, for example, how much each of these customers would use for peak, off-peak, and super off-peak. And we used the R1 rate average usage for each one of those. So if you zero out the meter charge and you charge people who qualify for this rate these amounts, it will result in a subsidy equal to the subsidy that was provided in 2025.
For the group.
For the group.
For the group.
Mhm.
Okay.
Otherwise, the rate mirrors what's in the basic RTOD rate that you've already approved.
Yep.
Any questions about that?
You told them not to ask any questions.
No, I said they couldn't request any changes. I didn't say they couldn't ask any questions.
I know. I'm joking. Okay.
All right, if there are no questions about that,
Oh, wait,
then
Brian.
Just one quick question about the super off peak time is also on Saturday, Sunday?
yes, it's Monday through Sunday, 1 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Every day of all 7 days of the week.
Yep, Monday through Sunday.
Okay. All right.
And that's the same for regular time.
Correct. It mirrors that. Okay, so the next one is for residential rate assistance customers who choose the opt-out rate. And this we kept as a rider. It basically mirrors the existing rate assistance rate in that rather than listing dollars per kilowatt hour in the rates, it says you're going to pay the R1 rate, but if you're on the rider, these adjustments are going to be made. So the adjustments are going to be that the meter charge would be credited to them, so they don't pay any meter charge. And they receive an 8.185 cent credit on the first 657 kilowatt hours, which is the exact same format that it's in today. And the reason the credit is being reduced pretty significantly from 13.8 cents to 8.2 cents is because we're zeroing out the meter charge credit. So if we add up all the revenue that is lost by crediting the meter charge, then we have less money to give in the per kilowatt hour credit to equal the same total credit that was given in 2025, if that makes sense.
Brian, you had a comment?
In our past discussions, one of the difficulties in doing this, the residential assistance rate, was the 657 kilowatt hour limit for the billing system. Is that not an issue for this rider?
So because the existing RESRA, what we call the RESRA rate now, looks exactly like what you're seeing here. I'm basically taking this new rate and dumping it into an existing shell. So
Okay,
it
so
already has
so
a bill print. It's
Right.
that's one reason I left this as a rider and made the other one a new rate. I think the new rate is easier for people to understand. They seem to respond better to this is what I'm going to pay than here's what I'm going to pay, but then here's what I'm going to get credited. Right. The latter one is a little more complicated. You got to do subtraction instead of just like looking at what you're going to pay. But because it was already formatted in this way, I said, let's just leave it. Let sleeping dogs lie. Keep it in the same format. We don't need to make any bill changes to it, and then it'll work.
And also, I'd like to request that when
Not,
customer, it's
Nice.
not you, it's not a change, not a change. I'd like to request that when residential assistance customers are considering opting out, that it be clarified that there is a limit to the credits on the kilowatt hours, just so that they understand that going in, that the rider has will stop crediting at 657, but the TOD will continue to credit beyond that.
Okay, yeah, we can add that to the script for the CSRs. I mean, the customers themselves will be used to this 657 limit because that's the way the rate is today. But I agree with you. It'd be good to reinforce that point if they're thinking about opting out.
Yeah.
Okay, and we had hoped that this rate, which is an existing rate within our system, it's called Residential Service Electric Vehicle Charging Separate Meter. We were hoping that we could retire this rate, but what has become apparent from several inquiries we've had directly from customers is that the off-peak separate meter time of day rate right now, the lowest price is about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. And the lowest price on the time of day rate is like 20 cents. So any customer who was going to have their separately metered EV go to the regular TOD rate was going to see a 3-cent increase in their electric vehicle charging cost. And because phase 2 will eliminate this problem, because the lowest rate in phase 2 is 16 and 17 cents, we thought it would be nice to extend to our customers who have separately metered EVs to extend the current rate by 1 year so that they can continue to charge their cars at 17 cents. When phase 2 comes, we can retire this rate because the regular RTOD rate will have a low price of 17 cents. So we're basically asking the board to extend this rate by 1 year.
Wait, extend it by 1 year or extend it by 8 months?
Until phase 2.
Until phase 2. I mean,
Until
there's
phase 2.
Okay.
yeah, there's no end date in the tariff itself.
Yeah.
That would be for the board to decide later, but that's the goal, is to retire it later.
Well, we did this for ETS, so doing it for EV customers is logical.
Good.
And then the meter charge will be addressed as an additional meter charge in our terms and conditions. So that's why it's struck from this tariff sheet.
And
Which actually the board does need to decide what charge is going to be for additional meters. You know, the consultant recommended $9 as a cost-based number. That's for meter acquisition, maintenance, meter reading. I know lower rates have been proposed, like 650.
Yeah,
So that is something the board will need to decide at some point here before too long, because people are asking now when they call in.
I thought we had voted on the 650 and made that choice.
isn't 650 what it is today and appears in some rates, Laura?
They were being revenue neutral.
My understanding is that we were thinking of sticking with the 650 at this time, since we're trying to keep things the same and similar, but we understand that the cost of service study consultant recommended or identified $9 as being the actual cost, and similar to how they also recommended that the customer charge be around $22 or $24, that we were going to move up in some sort of incremental way. And so I think in my mind, we were sticking with the 650 until, we come back maybe phase 2 or some other time, we can.
Okay, so that's done, and that'll be addressed in the TNC. It'll be 650 for additional meters.
And do the board members support that 650 price
Yeah,
generally?
Yes.
I do support, under the principle of keeping things simple, the fewest changes that we need to explain, the better.
Okay, so, and everybody understands what's happening on the second meter for the year.
Yeah.
Okay, and the final rate I want to talk to you about today is the NYPA credit. Due to limitations in the billing system, it's going to be difficult / impossible for us to continue to credit the NYPA benefit on a volumetric basis. Today, customers receive a certain cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, it's 3.9 cents that was voted by the board. On the smaller of how much energy is delivered by CMLP to the customer, or 75 kilowatt hours. So if we only sent you 50 kilowatt hours, you would get the NYPA credit, the 3.9 cents on 50 kilowatt hours. But if you use 1,000 kilowatt hours, you would get the NYPA credit on 75. That's the way it works today. Because of the limitations, it will be much simpler if we can simply put a fixed monthly credit on every single residential customer bill. And this $2.80 was calculated to be the estimated fixed amount that would result in the same NYPA credit overall being issued to residential customers when the board voted the 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour effective January 1st this year. So it will mean some inequities. There'll be like solar customers who weren't getting NYPA credits before because no energy was being delivered to them. It was only being sent. Will now get a monthly credit, whereas before they wouldn't. But it's a flat credit only to residential customers. And remember, what we're trying to do here is the NYPA power that we get is very cheap. And the state says that we have to allocate the benefit of that NYPA power, how much cheaper it is than market power, only to residential customers. And so this is that mechanism. And we are strongly recommending a fixed dollar credit, even though it won't result in exactly the same outcome as people see today, for administration simplicity.
I'm very supportive of this change. It's a small thing, but it's a good change.
Any other questions or comments on any of these rate sheets here? And
in the packet, you'll see that after the red line, we have basically all the changes accepted. So when there's a motion for vote, you can say as they appear in the clean tariff sheet section of the packet.
Or you give them a specific page number. What is that start?
In the packet, it starts on page 50.
50. Okay.
50.
So when we leave the
Say
rate
thank
hearing,
you to Laura for this
Oh.
amazing work. You are the brains behind this operation, Laura. Honestly, like without you, what do we do? Thank you.
Thank you,
Amazing.
Bianca, for those kind words.
so can we have a motion
Do you
to?
want to take any public comment, Warren?
Oh, sorry, you're right. Any public comment specifically on the tariff sheets? We'll have other public comments after.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the?
Do we need to
Rates
close
as
the rate
presented.
hearing
Yeah,
before?
close the hearing and then vote afterward.
I think we close the hearing, then vote.
Oh, okay. I'll never get this right.
That's all right.
Can we have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And
Oh.
a second?
Second.
Okay. Bianca,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Okay, we're out of the rate hearing. And can we have a motion to approve the new rates,
Starting on page 50.
Right.
starting on page 50?
I move that we approve the clean tariff sheets starting on page 50 for residential assistance TOD, the residential assistance rider, and the change to the NIPA credit and EV rates.
Second, EV.
Great. Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Bianca.
Bianca, second.
Okay. And John, do you approve?
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I approve as well. Great. Let us now turn to public comments.
And just raise your hand and I'll allow everybody to unmute.
Pamela Dritt raised her hand.
Yep, I've let me see if I can allow video, Pamela. Zoom has changed the there we go. All right. Everybody should be able to start their video now if you would like.
Hi, Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. I strongly approve the any rate changes that increase the cost of electricity only for those residences that are still using fossil fuel as heat sources. And since we can't do that, what we must do instead is reduce the cost of electricity for those all-electric heat pump residences and those with electric vehicles. What our rates do is incentivize consumer behavior in ways that ideology won't. So we need to make sure that doing the wrong thing costs more. And that means opting out costs more in general. And doing the right things costs less. So running heat pumps and installing batteries and solar should cost less, because like the whole time of day rate system does, it saves the entire community. And one of the things that we're saving by doing this, by electrifying all of our energy and creating a distributed grid, is we're creating the kind of system that will save the kinds of costs that climate change is destroying us with extreme weather events, because it will make us more resilient, and it will reduce the externalized costs of climate change for our community and make us better able to survive. But not if we don't do the infrastructure investments to solar and battery. So
Thank you very much, Pamela, for those comments. Any other public comments? Well, I have two closing comments. One is, the light board staff has been working hard on a lot of things, from the weather to power outages to all these changes to dealing with the stormwater stuff. And I'm sure all the board joins me in thanking the light board staff for their very hard work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And secondly, I look forward to seeing a lot of you in person and seeing if you really actually have legs.
I know.
So, okie doke. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I seconded.
Okay. And John,
Yes.
Bianca, do you? Ryan,
Yes.
I say yes as well. So thanks very much.
And I was a yes there too.
Excuse me?
I was a yes too. I don't think you got
Oh,
me.
sorry, I missed you. Sorry. Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. And Thanks for a good meeting. Bye now.
I